Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
Did the Rendlesham Forest UFO incidents go beyond December 1980? How do witnesses react to situations like that? What can paranormal experiences do to your life in the long run?
Hello, and welcome to the 862nd edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I am Ben, and those long-term questions came from my co-host, partner in Paranormal Adventures, and dad, Paul. And today we welcome an experiencer and new author who is familiar to our listeners, and we also welcome your calls today. The number is 401-766-1240. That's from anywhere. Or email Paul at behindtheparanormal.com or contact us via Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Wow, I don't know why. I forgot what social media was.
All right. Steve Laplume has not led the usual boring life. A native of Leominster, Massachusetts, he is a U.S. Air Force veteran who was present during the famous 1980 Rendlesham Forest UFO incidents in England. He first appeared on this show over 10 years ago when we did a lengthy series of shows about that case on CBS Radio and Achieve Radio. Today, Steve is one of our regular guest co-hosts, and he sometimes works with Ben and I on flap area cases. After leaving the Air Force, Steve worked as a professional soldier for hire. He went on to become a husband and father of two girls while working in project management. Living in China for 9 years, he worked as an actor in 2 movies, 2 TV series, and several commercials. He also was a bodyguard, often for American singers in China to do concerts. And he raced superbike motorcycles. I don't know what that is, but it sounds pretty fast.
Sounds pretty super to me.
Steve takes us on that journey in his brand new book, just out this week, Rendlesham to Redemption, A Story of Transformation. Today, Steve is home in New England, living in dear old New Hampshire.
Yes. Steve Laplume, welcome back to Behind the Paranormal.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's great to have you back with us. So let's just kind of jump right into brass tacks here. Well, it's 2 different metaphors. Anyway, Steve, briefly outline the Rendlesham Forest incident and the part that you played.
Sure. Well, on your intro, you said that I was present during the Rendlesham Forest incident, the 1980 incident and sightings that they had. But I was on base, but I wasn't present during those encounters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I outline that in my book and detail that out. So my sighting was actually about a month later, almost to the day. It was around the 27th of January. I actually went back and looked at an old calendar and counted the days, how many shifts I worked, and about what day it was, and what shift I was on. So it was about the 27th of January, 1981. And when the first incident happened in December, we didn't have any real clue of what happened. We knew that some guys got chased by a UFO in the woods, and then it was quiet after that. We never heard any details or anything. So when Airman Palmer and I had our sighting, we were really clueless and as to why there was such a reaction that happened. And what happened was we would go to the East Gate on the night shift, and we would check it every now and then, make sure that nobody had breached the gate, and just normal security, stuff. And it was kind of a boring night, so we were outside the vehicle, kind of leaned up against the vehicle talking and stuff. And in the southern sky, all of a sudden there was this light that looked like a satellite, and it was just moving across. Hopefully people see me on video, they can see this. It was moving across the screen from right to left, the sky, excuse me. And it suddenly started pulsating, and the only thing I can equate it to is like a heartbeat monitor where it just jumps up and down, and it started doing some acrobats. Nothing I've ever seen a plane do, even since. It's been 40 years. I've never seen a vehicle or a plane, anything that could do what this thing was doing. And it went over to the left, and it got kind of over near the woods, and it got lost behind a cloud. It was just a partly cloudy night. So it wasn't like it was a big event at that point. All we saw was, like I said, a light in the sky. But boy, when we called it in, it sure hit the fan. Palmer called it in, and he kind of threw me under the bus. He got in touch with Central Security Control and said, "Hey, Laplume just saw a UFO." So he didn't mention himself.
Actually, we're going to put that sketch up on the screen here for those who are watching the video. So go ahead, Steve.
Okay, so the sketch is actually the second part of our sighting.
Yeah.
So the first sighting happened as soon as word got okay, I saw a UFO. Then the phone rang. It was Lieutenant England, who was my shift commander, and he asked me what I saw. I said, "Okay, stay there. Somebody will be there." And it wasn't 15 minutes later, maybe at the most, 20 at the most, that Colonel Halt showed up in his little TR-8 Triumph, which is small enough to fit under the gate, actually, a small little car. And I think he actually went across the runway. He got permission to go across the runway to get there from base housing. So he showed up. He asked what was going on, and then the next thing you know, there was officers showing up all over the place. Lieutenant England finally showed up, as he was my immediate, supervisor, shift supervisor. He asked what I saw, said, "Okay, Colonel Williams will be out here. He's going to ask you what you saw." And Colonel Williams was the wing commander. And he said, "Oh, by the way, don't be nervous because he just made general last week." Yeah. So it was general. So, okay, so here I am, this little snot-nosed 18-year-old kid, with 2 stripes on my arms and all this brass around me. It was a little intimidating, to say the least. And he showed up, and he was generally concerned with what was going on. What did I see? Okay. But then they all got in an Air Force station wagon, and they left a starlight scope with us, and they said, if you see anything, let us know. And they all took off into the woods, which Palmer and I were kind of scratching our heads. We didn't really understand, or at least I didn't understand, why they would go into the woods. It was up in the sky in the clouds. There was nothing out in the forest, But again, we had no idea what happened, during December. So after about 40 minutes or so, they came back. And I talked with Colonel Holt recently, and he said that they went out there, they didn't see anything. They, were satisfied everything was secure, and they came back. It was basically the gist of their little visit out to the woods. And they posted me on the gate the rest of the night, which usually isn't manned. But they posted me there the rest of the night, so I had to stay at the east gate, which is kind of a creepy gate.
Yeah, I know. I've been there.
Yeah, during the time there was a clear cut. There was a big area behind the guard shack that was open for a free fire zone, so we could see people come in and shoot and have a clear field of fire. So it's a little less creepy, because I've seen recent pictures and it's all overgrown. It looks pretty harsh. But so I never really stayed in that little guard shack because you had your back to the forest. So I would go up against what we call the blast wall, where when the planes were on the runway, they would go up and take a left, and their exhaust would come across the road. So they built a blast wall so the plane's exhaust wouldn't hinder traffic or endanger people. So I sat up there, and about an hour later, Palmer came back to check on me, and we were sitting there again, just talking, leaning up against the vehicle. And when you're on that gate, after a while, you can tell where the flight pattern is and when planes are coming in for a landing. So we saw a light coming in, and we figured it was probably the C-130 that was up, and that it was coming in to land. But it was over to the right of where the normal flight path would be, and it seemed a little odd. So that's where the second picture, that picture that you're talking about, that's our second sighting.
Let me just interrupt to just say most of the people are not seeing the video. You can go to behindtheparanormal.com and click on Talking Points pages, click on 2020. It's right at the top, just for those of you who want to look at the picture. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, sure. No problem. So we saw this light, just like a regular plane coming in, had a landing light on. It was no big deal. But the issue was it was to the right. And like I said, after a while, you know the patterns and stuff. And so it seemed a little odd. And when the plane was coming in, or the vehicle, I thought it was a plane, but it was, what do they call them now, unmanned aerial vehicles?
Yeah.
When this vehicle was coming in, it was over the treetops, and it wasn't that far over the treetops. I'm going to say at most it was 1,000 feet off the deck, and it came in over the treetops, and it came up the access road to the east gate. And as soon as it cleared the trees, it was like my sense of reality really changed a lot. Suddenly I had tunnel vision. I didn't hear anything. I couldn't hear Palmer if he was talking to me. I didn't hear a word he said. And I was just staring at this thing, and as it was coming in, it seemed like it was long and cylindrical shape, like cigar shaped, and it had a bit of a cloud around it. And again, I was just real tunnel vision. And when it was about halfway up the road, from that point to being over my head, I don't remember. I don't know if it got there quick or what the scoop was, but all of a sudden it was halfway up the road, and the next thing you know, it was over my head, and I was craning my neck backwards looking up at it. I had my M16 shouldered and never thought to unshoulder my weapon and shoot at it. It wasn't a threat that I could perceive. And but it was definitely a craft. I looked up at it, and it was a structured craft, and it had some lights around it, but the lights were in my peripheral. And when it was over me, it seemed like it was round, and it wasn't cigar-shaped anymore, and I don't know why. But it had some yellow, green, and a blue light. And again, it was soft light, and it was in my peripheral vision. And what I was looking up at, though, seemed like it was a hatch. And I'm saying a hatch because I can't really render what else it would have been. But it was like a square inside of a square inside of a square, again, smaller. And I remember looking up at it and thinking, wow, Steve, this is going to be the greatest thing you ever saw in your life. Suck it up. So I tried to get as much detail as I could. And after just, I don't think this thing was over our head, maybe 15, 20 seconds. It started veering off to the right, which was, again, to the southern sky, and just slowly climbed up into the sky and blended in with the stars. But I have an issue with the fact that it was over my head at one point, and the next second or the next memory I have is it was to the right, and it wasn't a craft anymore as much as it was just a ball of light heading back up. You know, I couldn't see a structured craft at that point. I just saw a light. So, and that's just my memory of it. I've never been able to talk with Palmer since, so I don't know. We never even compared notes about it.
I found that interesting in the book that you said you and Palmer never mentioned it again.
No, you know, he after it went up into the stars, I remember my first words were, "Oh, it's blended with the stars. I can't see it anymore." And Palmer looked at me, and I looked at him, and he said, "Do you want to call it in?" And I said, "Hell no," because I mean that's just a career ender right there, you know. And I at that point I had no ambitions to get out of the U.S. Air Force. I'd been treated well, and I was real happy with my job and everything. So after that, he and I never talked about it. What did you see? Did you see this or that? He went back to work, and I stayed on the post till the next morning, and it was rather bizarre that we didn't talk about it, I guess. But I don't. We were traumatized. I don't know. No explanation on that one.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into the trauma that resulted, but first of all, you mentioned tunnel vision. So you mean you were fixated on the object?
Oh yeah. Totally.
And go ahead.
I was going to say I can only liken. I've been in a lot of high adrenaline situations, especially a lot of crashes, racing motorcycles, and that sort of thing. And you definitely get tunnel vision. You're hearing. It was like one of the first firefight I got in. I would think it would be extremely loud, but my ears kind of shut off, and I was able to, hear what was going on and finally function. But it was just tunnel vision, and your hearing gets altered. When you have an adrenaline rush, that's typically what happens.
Yeah, I've been in a couple of situations like that too.
I would imagine.
Yeah. Would you consider your experience involving missing time? Because in the woods, Peniston and Burroughs were talking about that during the initial incidents the month before. Do you think you had a missing time experience?
Well, I never looked at my watch, so I can't say for sure. Okay,
that would have been the clue.
Yeah. So that so I can't verify that, but it just seems odd. All of a sudden, this ship was halfway up the road, then it was over my head. And then it went from over my head to my right-hand side, and it was hundreds of yards away, and I do not remember that.
Ben, that's the same road we were on when we were there.
Oh, yes, I remember.
It was very strange. We felt like something was following us. We had a couple of other people with us, and some local listeners were, met up with us, and because we spoke in Woodbridge the next night. But it was very strange, very strange. So in any case, I find interesting your description, which you just gave, and it's also in the book, of a fog or mist-like substance around this craft. Do you have any explanation for that? Because we do.
No. No, I sure don't. If you have a clue, I'd be interested. But, I looked at a picture of somebody did a drawing of a UFO, and I thought, well, I'm saying it was cigar-shaped, but if it was fogged out, maybe I was just seeing a kind of a side view of it or something, and maybe it seemed like it was cigar-shaped because the rest was covered up with fog or mist or whatever.
Possibly. In our opinion, we see this in ghostly phenomena, sometimes cryptids, and certainly with UFOs. And, if this is the correct explanation, you know our theories. You've been on the show a lot, and you help us out. The multiverse thing and the plasma-charged membranes between parallel worlds that physicists actually talk about. And maybe that's how you will see very often a ghost, quote unquote, as a glowing figure, as opposed to just somebody standing there. And so it might have been the same thing in your case, but again, who knows? Yeah. So, what did this do to your life?
Well, immediately it didn't do anything other than I felt internally, I just felt kind of betrayed. Like, wow, these things really exist. Everybody's been lying to me. I grew up a good Catholic boy and went to church and everything. And I'm thinking, well, the church says they don't exist. My parents say they don't exist. My commanders say they don't exist. But yet I'm looking at this thing. Yeah. So, a little confusion there. But later on, after I had talked with Larry, I generally got concerned for my safety. And I explained.
Yeah, it's Larry Warren you're mentioning.
Yeah, Larry Warren. Yeah, he came in and talked to me, and he talked to me about how they had gotten basically abducted, not by the UFOs, but in the intelligence world, and were interrogated and all this stuff that happened. And I was greatly concerned for my safety. And at a certain point, I noticed that I was being tailed, and I actually confronted the two people that were following me after the third time I caught them. And like I said, I just felt overwhelmed and just so out of sort. Like, I got to get out of here, Yeah. And then, I don't know, my whole attitude towards life and reality and my perception of what was going on changed a lot, and I just kind of had I know we're on radio, I can't swear, but I just had basically an F it type of attitude. I just didn't care anymore. I just figured the rules didn't apply anymore, and I just didn't want to be a part of the established world, and I just went out and did my own thing.
Yeah. So. Well, we've talked about this over dinner a few times or lunch, yeah. That many of the dangerous things you did later in life may have been the way may have been paved for those by this experience in a way.
Oh yeah, if I was never there that night, then I think I would have had a nice career in the Air Force, and I would have been retired, and life would have been good.
Retired as a general, no doubt.
Yeah, I don't know about a general, but maybe a master sergeant or something. But.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, no, go ahead.
All right. Do you feel that your life, your early life, which you also describe in the book, is quite interesting and rather similar to mine, because it was very interesting to me. Do you feel that at any point sort of led up to the Air Force, up to RAF Bentwaters or Woodbridge, and then up to this event, this experience? As sort of a pivotal point in your life?
Well, yeah. Well, originally, I think we talked about this before. I actually wanted to be a licensed practical nurse. I had worked in a nursing home, and I really thought that was a great career. And I was all geared up. All my high school studies were geared towards that, health classes and everything I needed. And I was going to go into the nursing school, which back then, Jimmy Carter was president, and the economy wasn't doing good, and it was just a depressed time, so they closed the nursing school because of budget cuts. So that was kind of like my first feeling of betrayal, I guess, in my life was, I just had the rug pulled out from under me. So I was a little upset over that. And then I had to try and figure out what I was going to do with my life at that point. And I didn't have the wherewithal to go anywhere else because this was like a local school. I literally could have walked to school. It was a mile and a half from my house. At that point, I just decided, okay, well, my father's in the Air Force Reserves, and he's a police officer, and all right, maybe I'll do something along those lines. So I went and talked to a recruiter in the Air Force, and he showed me a short video on security, police, and law enforcement. I thought, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'd get, my father's approval, him being a police officer. So I signed up and I ended up going in as a police officer, which my mother actually had to sign because I was only 17.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, "Well, I'm surprised you chose that. I would have thought you would have gone in as a medic or something, but I don't know. I just had an attitude."
Yeah, you described that in no uncertain terms in the book too. So, but it's very, very interesting to read. Now, can you talk about some of the other life events that may have been, I don't know, inspired or perpetrated by this experience and the attitude change that it made? You were a soldier of fortune?
Yeah, I mean, that's now they call them military contractors, I guess. But and
a bit more euphemistic. Yeah,
I was definitely hiring myself out for pay. I mean, and I made a conscious decision. I remember sitting on the corner of my bed saying, "Okay, God, I'm done with you. I'm turning my back on you, and I'm going to go do this." And I actually sat and did a little mental hardening of my heart because I knew I was going to see some bad stuff, and just made a conscious decision to go wage war on my fellow man.
Yeah.
I really got into a real dark place for about 5 years. I mean, I was really in love with death. I mean, for lack of a better term. So
this leads into one thing that we wanted to ask, and that's what it did to your spirituality. And you just began to describe this. Most of us grow up in very comfortable, at least in this country, very, very comfortable religions or things that you might not entirely like, but nevertheless that they're grounding for us. And then an experience like that, and I've seen it happen with many people, end up kind of turning you into something entirely different. That you wouldn't recognize yourself from previous incarnation, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a definite truism right there. Yeah, it just blew my belief system apart, basically, and I just figured, okay, no right, no wrong, I can do whatever I want, no consequences, So I just twisted off, and my new God was green and had pictures of presidents and statements on it.
Yeah.
So.
In a way, though, and I had some of the same training, obviously, but it was very different reasons and places and everything else, and wasn't my focus for very long. But you once described to me that you would be, when you were on a mission, you would be the grass blowing in the wind.
Oh.
That I recognize that. But that in itself is almost a spiritual exercise.
Yeah. How to become invisible when the enemy's looking right at you, basically. Yeah.
Well, we were told just be where you're not expected to be, and that's the first half of invisibility.
Right. I've snuck into a few camps, literally, I want to say 15 feet from people sitting around a fire talking, and they never saw me sneak in and never saw me sneak out. But trying to get in there and listen to see what they were saying, that sort of thing. The whole, I actually did an interview with somebody. They were talking about the sixth sense, and coming up behind somebody and burning your thoughts into the back of their head. They'll turn around every time.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
When we do our training, we would. Some of our training, we would line people up, and they would have a can of CS gas. So if they heard you, they could turn around and spray you in the face with it. So you would have to try and sneak up and put a rope around their neck was the exercise to use a garrote and take them out.
Yeah.
So everybody would go up and fail initially. It was kind of comical. They would all get up, get sprayed, and nobody ever got a rope around anybody's neck. But then our instructor, Frank Camper, who was running this mercenary school, he said, okay, now try it this way. When you go up, stop burning your thoughts into the back of this guy's head because he can feel it, and just become one with nature. Think that, you're the grass, you're the wind, just become part of nature. You're invisible. You're not there. And, boy, the rate of success of putting a rope around somebody's neck after that went up exponentially.
Well, the fact that you are very thin doesn't hurt with coming and going either.
Well, yeah. I mean, I actually had kind of a knack for that.
I'm joking there.
Yeah. but it was kind of weird. I actually had a real good knack for sneaking up and sneaking in and out of places. That was kind of my thing.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take our bottom of the hour break. You're listening to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on WOON 1240 AM and 99.5 FM in New England's gorgeous Blackstone River Valley, and our amazing guest today, Steve Laplume. And we'll be right back, so stick with us.
night is alive. Join us and take a walk on the weird side when you tune in to The Kingdom of Nye, hosted by Heather Wade, the finest in late night talk. Listen live free weeknights starting at 9 p.m. Pacific time at thekingdomofnye.com, talkstreamlive.com, and the Paranormal Radio app. Wanna take a ride?
Hello and welcome back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. It's WOON 1240 AM and 99.5 FM. And we're talking today with Steve Laplume, who is usually a guest co-host on the show. But before we get back to talking about the Rendlesham Forest case and its effect on his life and the effect of paranormal experiences on the lives of all experiencers, we have our very dear friend of all of us, including Steve, Susan Spooler, who's with us. Susan, how are you doing today?
Good morning, Paul. How are you?
Oh, certainly better than nothing. So you got some news for us, eh?
Yes, we're not having the Greater New England UFO conference this year, but we are having the Greater New England UFO Film Festival of UFO and Bigfoot movies at the Wilton Town Hall Theater in Wilton, New Hampshire. And I'm starting to put the list of movies on my website of www.newenglandufo.com. I can give you a taste of some of the movies we'll be having.
Sure. Yeah, a rough connection there.
We may be playing The Blob. We're playing The Day the Earth Stood Still. We'll be playing quite a few of Alexander Petticoff's movies that he has had pertaining to Betty and Barney Hill and other UFO events, especially accidents. So we're also you'll be doing your radio show on the Sunday. The event is October 9th to the 11th.
Yeah. That'll be on the 11th. We'll be doing it in this usual time slot.
Right. And so it's a noon time. And in the Wilton Town Hall Theater, their website is www.wiltontownhalltheatre.com. And they used to do vaudeville in Wilton. There's two screens.
Oh, gee.
So one of them one has a nice stage with velvet curtains. And then we'll have Bigfoot in one screen, and we'll have UFO stuff on the other screen. And lots of surprises for the event. And as I said, I'm loading information as I get it on my newenglandufo.com website.
Excellent. Well, I'll be there for the whole thing, and Ben was going to make his efforts to be there for at least some of it, particularly the show, of course.
Oh yeah, I'll make every effort to be there. I am a fan of film.
Oh yes. Having
wonderful.
been to film school, yeah. So very good. And again, would you give the website once again, please, Susan?
Sure. www.newenglandufo.com.
Very good. And we have links to that on our show website as well.
Right. And I'm constantly adding new information on there.
Very good.
For everybody. So.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, Susan will be calling. Oh, good. Then you'll be calling in probably each week between now and then to remind everybody.
Absolutely.
Great. Very good.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well,
thank
you
so much. Looking forward to seeing you and honoring your 50 years in the paranormal.
Oh, well, I don't know. I feel like it or not. In that sense, what does that mean for how old I am? Anyway, I do appreciate that, Susan, very, very much, and we look forward to seeing you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're supposed to be our keynote speaker, so we're honoring you in other ways.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon. Take care.
Very good. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so let's get back to our guest here, Steve Laplume. Now, Steve, before we move on to other subjects, how did you come out of that dark period? And how did it affect your attitude? I mean, did you change your attitude toward your UFO experience, or how did you do that?
No, you know what? After that UFO experience, I did an interview with Chuck DeCaro with CNN, which, oddly enough, I was sitting in a hotel room with a bunch of mercenaries getting ready to go to Nicaragua one time, and that aired. So it's a little embarrassing.
Yeah.
But as far as getting out of it, I actually, one thing about this book is I'm very honest and I'm very open. I really
yes, you are. Yeah.
So I was doing some acid one night, doing some LSD, and finally realized, hey, I could probably get killed doing this. And I had an incident where I was getting set up to be executed. And I covered that in the book a little bit. It was just a lot of intrigue with intelligent people. I don't even know how to put that without getting in trouble. But
well, don't get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, I glossed it over in the book. Anyways, so once I realized I really didn't know which side I was on and who was who, and some of the people I had worked with, it set me up to get hit. Then I just decided, okay, it's time to get out of this and do that. And one of the biggest issues I had was I was getting rid of all the stuff that I had. I had, let's say, firearms I probably shouldn't have had. So I destroyed them. But I had this one pistol that was not illegal. I bought it down in Georgia. Anyways, long story short, I ended up selling it to somebody. They used it in a crime, and that came back on me. And when that came back on me, I ended up having to had to leave the New England area for a little while. I went out west and lived over there in California for a while and stayed under the radar. And then after a few months, I finally I got my license over there, and as soon as I got my license, I had the FBI and the ATF knocking on my door, basically. So I got all my legal stuff squared away. But on my trip from the East Coast to the West Coast, I was riding a motorcycle, and it took me about 6 days. And me and God had a big, long talk, 6 days worth of talk. Mm-hmm. And I just was like, okay, I'm done with that part of my life. I didn't make any money at it. I didn't get where I wanted to be, So, how about the white picket fence in the family? Maybe I ought to try that and just become human again. Because those 5 years where I was working as a mercenary, I really didn't consider myself human, as far as my status socially, I guess is a good way to put it. So I got out to California. I got myself established, started racing motorcycles out there because apparently I'm an adrenaline junkie because I really like the thrill. Yeah. So started racing motorcycles. And then you said you didn't know what superbikes were. Superbikes are street bikes that are just basically hopped up a lot.
Oh.
And we're the idiots that you see going around the track real fast with our knees on the ground.
Yeah. I've seen pictures of you doing. As matter, I have to mention that in the book is a marvelous picture gallery with photos from various points in your life, including that. And I found them I hadn't seen most of those before, and I found it fascinating to look at.
Yeah, I've got all sorts of video and pictures of me racing over the years. But actually, I think I got a little faster when I got older because I didn't care as much.
Yeah, right. So moving on then, and you've essentially found God. And that's what pulled you out,
or refound God, I guess.
Refound, okay.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I was a Christian, I was a Catholic when I grew up and everything. But when I got out to California, just the way things worked, the guy that was working on my bike was a Christian, and he invited me to go to his outreach, which I never really understood what an outreach was till I went to one, and it's all walks of life. There were some real freaky-looking people in this meeting, and I thought, what would I get myself into,
Yeah.
But the pastor was real. He was young. He was very articulate, and I don't know. He touched my heart, and I went up and dedicated my life to God, and been a Christian ever since. So,
okay. Well, it sounds like
not that I haven't faltered. I've definitely.
Well, everyone does. Okay, excellent. Well, now let's get back to the UFO subject in the sense of, in a general sense. Do you feel that attitudes maybe you're not as in touch with the military, but I'm still in touch with a lot of old friends, that the attitudes toward UFOs have changed from the 1980s, from the Rendlesham case, when, you described being made fun of, or people were almost ostracized for having reported these experiences. Do you think that's changed at all?
Well, I guess, with the development of the Space Force, I guess it has to change, you know. People are looking at stuff out there, and I think just in general, people are becoming a little more aware of, hey, what was that in the sky I saw? Or how come the NASA feed got cut off when this thing suddenly entered the picture? I mean, I think people are questioning it a little more. And in the military, I mean, what was it? The Department of the Navy now has come out with a process of actually reporting.
Which they're showing ad nauseum on television.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a TV, so I don't know.
Oh, good man.
Yeah, that's fair. It's probably for the best if I'm going to be honest.
I like keeping my mind clear of garbage. So.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's not so much news as it is entertainment. That being said, there's this sort of recurring theme of sort of how we view reality that's kind of woven its way through this entire discussion, right? So. Yep. We all have these preconceived notions about existence, and we all think that everything around it kind of enforces whatever it is. All of us are guilty of that. And one thing that's sort of become more and more clear over the years, especially with our research, your experiences, and everyone's experiences really, is that the paranormal in and of itself can be dismissed, right, from the human experience. It's like, oh, well, hey, this person saw a ghost over here. Oh, this guy saw a UFO. Okay, well, whatever. It doesn't affect them. It's sort of this sort of portion of the environment that happens every so often, and we see it, and then that's all it is. It's just some benign thing that happens. And as time has gone on, we've seen that the effects of it are far-reaching, and it sort of either is a catalyst for a great change in life, whether the event does it or we do it to ourselves. The sort of breaking of the fabric of our understanding of everything really is all tied up into that. And this discussion has really brought a couple of things to mind for me, which I've been, hence why I've been so quiet. I've been listening to everything that's been said to get to this point. So there are two sort of notions that I found super fascinating. One was the notion of comfort that was brought up, that we are comforted by things we understand, quote unquote, and we are comforted by our cushy lives, technology, food, all of that. And when something happens to expose us to something that we are not used to, or something that is different, it can change us in ways that we don't expect. And I think your journey in life is a perfect example of that. That this event led you down a path of, just something that no one would ever expected. Probably you would never have expected.
No. Yeah.
And this idea of being human, right? Like, what does it mean to be human? If these belief systems that we have sort of reinforce how we view the world, how we view ourselves, essentially, right? When an event, such as seeing something that just completely destroys your outlook on existence, or that barrier, that kind of keeps you safe from the world, in a sense, how does it define you, right? And so after all of this, Steve, after everything I've just said, how do you define you in your life now?
Extremely open-minded is the best way I could put it. There's so many different theories about everything that happened, during that time period over there at Bentwaters and Woodbridge. I'm just open-minded to all of it. I don't know what I saw that night. I'll probably never know what I saw that night, unless for some reason there's some sort of disclosure. But Paul, I know that you're very much in tune with the whole multiverse, and I'm kind of in tune with that as well. It just seems to me there's a lot more out there than what we're led to believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you say that you're comfortable with the uncomfortable?
Oh no, I'm comfortable in my own skin and with what's going on and stuff. Yeah, like I said, I'm just very open-minded. I've got my own belief system. I still truly believe that there is a God. It might not be a white guy on the cloud like everybody.
Exactly. Yeah.
Type of thing.
Well,
for me, God's just like the ultimate love in the universe. So, yeah.
Well, we have 3 questions from our very faithful questioner, Peter in Bogota, Colombia. So, Ben, if you take these...
oh, sure thing. Typically, we get to these earlier in the show. Sorry about that. So, Peter writes to us, in a previous interview, you said you were followed by 2 men with German accents who were driving a black Lincoln with New York plates in England. Did you ever figure out who they were and why Germans would be following you?
No, I never figured that out, but these were definitely back then we used to call them spooks, the intel people. These 2 spooks were following me, and like I said, I confronted them, and I never saw him again after that. And trust me, I was looking for him. The fact that they were speaking German, that's just what the barmaid told me. I never heard him even speak. When I talked with them, when I talked with that one individual, he never said a word to me. I just told him, hey, you guys are lousy tails. You know, you might as well stop because I'm on to you. And I turned and walked away from him. So I just called him on the fact that they were tailing me. And I'd never seen or heard from him since.
Fair. Hey, it worked, I guess.
Yeah, you scared him.
So he goes on to ask, you said that sodium pentothal was being used on other witnesses at the base. Was it used on you? Why or why not?
No, it was never used on me, and I was never debriefed. And I think it was because we never reported the second sighting. I think if we would have reported that, we'd have had a little more interaction with the intel folks. But since we never reported it and we kept our mouth shut, you know, it wasn't on their radar, I guess. But I never got abducted. I mean, my whole debriefing was when I came off duty. My sergeant said, "Hey, what'd you see out there?" I told him. He said, "Oh, okay. Well, you missed the bus. You need to go catch a ride back to the barracks." So, I mean, nobody even paid attention to me.
And his final question is, have you heard of any other NATO bases that have experienced similar UFO activity?
No, I haven't, but, you know, oddly enough, I don't really follow the whole UFO. You know, after this incident, it wasn't like I became a UFO researcher or was really interested in it. To me, that was like such a bad point in my life. I wanted nothing to do with it. I wanted nothing to do with the Air Force anymore. And, you know, like I said, I just twisted off and did my own thing. And I never paid any attention whether there was anything else going on any other NATO bases.
Well, the book is Redemption, I should say, Rendlesham to Redemption. What prompted you to write the book, Steve?
You know, oddly enough, it was basically age, and I'd gotten pretty sick here about a year or so ago, and I thought, well, if I'm going to say anything, and there was a lot of people back and forth, all the witnesses hating each other, and, you know, a lot of infighting, and I mean, I just figured I just wanted to say what I had to say, get it on the record for a historical matter, and then if anybody involved with the case has anything to say, they can say it now while they're still alive and I'm still alive. You know, I didn't want to be the guy to say, okay, here's what happened, but, you know, nobody else is alive, because I'm one of the youngest guys on the whole situation. So, because I just turned 18 at the time. Yeah. So, you know, like Colonel Holt, I think is up in I think he's 80 now. So,
it'll look it. But yeah, time flies and you're having fun.
Lack thereof. But.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So there was the whole purging of getting it off my chest and getting, you know, everybody's told me, oh, you ought to write a book. So I just finally did, you know, and I never really wanted to. I just felt compelled that I probably ought to, you know, I probably owe it, you know, I guess to society to explain what happened and what I saw and get my take on it. And the only reason I actually injected myself in this whole case was because people were saying, oh, well, the officers knew what was going on and this and that. I'm guaranteeing you, the officers had no clue that night what was going on. They were as clueless as the rest of us. So maybe they were brought into the fold later on, but that night when they came out during my sighting, they didn't seem to have any idea what was going on any more than I did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fair. So now that you've written the book, how are you feeling about everything now?
Actually, a little nervous and probably embarrassed because, like I said, I really opened up a lot on this book, and I talked about a lot of embarrassing stuff. But I felt that's the only way I could write this book was to be honest and open and as true as I could be. You know.
Well, when we first had you on the show 10 years ago, we liked you immediately. Well, you were still in China at the time. And we became friends, and when you came back here, we started hanging out as much as the distance would permit, and with Ronnie LeBlanc at Leominster State Forest, that sort of thing, checking stuff out there, and all kinds of things. And then you became a co-host on the show. So we kind of have watched your evolution over the 10 years, as friends, and it seemed as though there was a point in the beginning you were reluctant to talk about a lot, and then you became more comfortable with it. You were on the show, or you were on some panels with us, and it was a good thing to see, that you were becoming more comfortable, as you say, in your own skin. And it's wonderful to see this book now. That's just my personal thought on this. As far as something that you brought up that's very important, and again, not to dwell on this, but and we brought this up during our series, it was 10 years ago, but it went into 2011 and 2012. We did over 16 hours on the air in this case with the witnesses, including yourself, that it seemed as though the bad feeling that resulted from this, the tension, the politics that really divided people is something that to us is never good. In our opinion, I mean, the experiences of this kind should bring people together, not drive them apart. Do you think at this point that the fact that people were so divided by this case, and others too, was deliberate on the part of whether it be the intelligence community, whom Colonel Halt said on this show had, quote, messed with people, unquote, particularly the ones who were there in the December sightings? I mean, what's your feeling on it? Do you think this is deliberate, or it's human nature, or are we missing something, or what?
Boy, I really don't have an answer for that one.
Yeah, well, neither do we. That's why we asked the question.
Yeah. Probably the open-ended question of the century, right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. I mean, I don't. When it comes to the intel people messing with people and stuff like that, it seems to me that they're as unknowing as the rest of us, or maybe I don't know. There's two sides to that coin, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, either they want to know what you know so they can somehow, put a damper on the whole situation, or they're generally interested because they don't have a clue.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, as an author now, a new author, you are probably aware that you're going to be in the crosshairs of interviewers and various demands to speak and do book signings, and you're prepared to accept the grueling schedule that implies?
Yeah, this is actually my first interview this week, and I've got two more already lined up.
Oh, all right.
One for Friday, and yeah, I'm already getting requests. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, and I'm mentally prepared for that. That's fine.
That's great. Well, Steve, I think it's wonderful to see this new book, and we encourage people to check it out. So tell people tell us about the book, where people can find out more, and where they can get it.
Yeah, I self-publish, so it's on Amazon. You just can go to Amazon.com and look up Rendlesham to Redemption, and it'll be in their bookstore. And it's on sale now. It went live, I think, Saturday.
Okay, yeah, it's on there. We checked it, yeah. And we have a picture of the cover on our websites and Facebook pages. And unless Ben has another question, I have one more. What does the future hold for you, do you think?
Oh, boy. I don't know.
None of us does, but...
Right now, I'm just being a gentleman farmer and trying to live in peace. But I do like writing, and I'm planning, and I'm actually right now just continue writing. I've got a lot of short stories I wanted to write, and maybe make a collection of short stories in a book.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, Ben?
No, I'm...
Okay, a great conversation.
Yeah.
Stevie, you're always our dear friend, and we'll look forward to having you on as a co-host again soon. It's more fun to have you in the studio, but COVID still being what it is, we do it at a distance, but it's still fun. And again, congratulations on the book.
Yeah, congrats.
And if you want to hang out with us, you're going to do the quote at the end of the show, right?
Yeah, I got to find the quote.
Okay. Well, good. We only have a few minutes. We won't bother you. We won't bother you during the announcements.
You got plenty of time.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. All right. Thanks, Steve Laplume, everybody. Renaissance man. All right, Ben, take us away here.
Okie dokie. So the Greater New England UFO Conference will take place at the Wilton Town Hall Theater on Saturday and Sunday, October 10th and 11th. Because of COVID restrictions, this event has a limited audience and will be a Bigfoot and UFO film festival. I don't know why I said that as three separate syllables, but I did. No speakers and no vendor tables. We will broadcast the show live from the venue on Sunday with special guest Nigel Watson, British UFO researcher, and there will be a private dinner to honor my dad for his 50 years of paranormal research. Well done, Dad.
Oh dear. Well, I don't do well with praise. I don't know.
Right.
But
do you want me to insult you instead?
No. That's all right. Anyway, the website is newenglandufo.com. Our good friend Susan Spooler, the organizer, called in earlier, and if you're listening to the recording of this show, then you can hear her do that. But that was something that I think we should point out again, NewEnglandUFO.com, and it's Wilton, not Wilson. There was kind of a rough connection there, and it might have come across like Wilson. It's Wilton, New Hampshire.
I think she might have been looking down or moving away from the phone to read.
Oh, it sounded like a bad kid. Right? Anyway,
I mean, it happens to the best of us.
Yeah, so Wilton Town Hall Theater.
Yes.
And that's October 10th and 11th, Saturday and Sunday. Actually, also Friday night. The 9th, 10th, yeah. So Bigfoot and UFO. All right. The following week, the Western Connecticut UFO Conference will take place via Facebook Live on Saturday and Sunday, October 17th and 18th. This is a free annual event sponsored by the Danbury, Connecticut Public Library. Along with ourselves, speakers will include our own Shane Searway and Mark D'Antonio. I don't know if Linda Zimmerman's going to be there, but there is a substitute for her. Mike Panicello of Connecticut MUFON and more. On Sunday, we will simulcast our show. We can figure out the technicalities of it from here at WOON Studios with special guest Dr. Bill Burns of the UFO Hunters TV series, New York Times best-selling author and publisher of UFO Magazine.
And additionally, we have word that the New England Parafest will take place on April 10th and 11th. I know it's kind of far out in 2021.
Not really, when you think about it.
Well, time is relative. In Kittery, Maine, we will do a live broadcast of this show with a panel of the speakers on Sunday the 11th. More information will be forthcoming.
And check out our books along with those of our other co-hosts. And as a matter of fact, we're going to get Steve's book up on our website too, because he's a co-host, at our show website, BehindTheParanormal.com, where you can also find out more about the show, our history, our many cases over the years, our public appearances, and how to book us, along with some of our 800, actually it's more like 900 free recorded shows from our 12 plus years on the air, including our 4.5-year run on CBS Radio, along with special shows and podcasts. And the whole Rendlesham series we referred to earlier in the show in our conversation with Steve, that's all present on most of the podcast platforms, iTunes, etc. Look back 2010, 2011,
and speaking 2012. Of podcast platforms, past shows back to late 2009 are also available on major podcast platforms, including YouTube, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, the Paranormal Radio app, and more. Soon we will have all shows back to 2008 uploaded to all these applications. If you have the ability to give us a little bit of a rating or subscribe to us on any of those platforms, it helps us keep up with the podcast.
And we call it our main website, but NewEnglandGhosts.com is out there. I think it was designed in the 1990s, and it's currently being redesigned, but it's still up, has a lot of case histories and stuff that people might be very interested in. There are links to a number of charities on the show, or check the charity page at BehindTheParanormal.com, and we'd really appreciate it if you would help them, because these are all people we know who run these charities, USA Cares and many more. So, Ben, what do we have up for next week?
So next week, September 27th, we welcome two new guests, Pam Nance and Ashley Field, a mother and stepdaughter ghost investigation team who use progressive theories, very similar to our own.
Yeah, we use the progressive without any political overtones. That's sort of our term.
Like scientific progress.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think that they're kind of like the closest thing to us that I've run into.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, you know. Hey, we'll see, you know.
Yeah.
Do something little different.
Well, I had a very good conversation with both of them. You weren't able to participate that day, but on Skype, and the theories are very interesting and very similar to our own. So anyway. So we'll leave you today with a quote offered by our dear friend and guest, Steve Laplume. Steve, take it away.
Sure. This quote is actually in the back of my book, and it's by Confucius, and I thought it was fitting. It says, "There are 3 methods of gaining wisdom. The first is reflection, which is the highest. The second is limitation, which is the easiest. And the third is experience, which is the bitterest."
There you go. And I'm Paul Eno.
And I'm Ben Eno, and thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey, and we shall see you next time on Behind the Paranormal.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.